Digital Personal Data Protection Bill 2023 as amended.
The Digital Personal Data Protection Bill was passed in the Lok Sabha on 7th August amid noisy scenes.
जो सदस्य विरोध में है वो ना कहे मेरे विचार में निर्णय हाँ वालों के पक्ष.
This was no different from when it was introduced.
I rise to move for leave to introduce a bill to provide for the processing of digital personal data.
अभी कितना अच्छा लग रहा था, हाउस ठीक से चल रहा था.
4 points.
प्लीज बैठ जाइए.
Right to privacy violation.
For a very long time, there has been a demand for a data protection law in India. Europe has a very strong General Data Protection Regulation or GDPR, and so the questions were naturally raised in India about a similar law here. When our data is collected, where is it stored, who owns it, what part of it is public, can we ask for some data to be deleted? What are the responsibilities of those who handle our data? The previous data protection bill was withdrawn by the government, and the new bill, the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill, was introduced by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology in November 2022 for wider consultation. That is when the alarm bell started to ring. From new penalty structure to rebranding consent to new grievance redressal approach, the new bill aims to establish a comprehensive framework for the protection of personal data. But all is not well with the new data protection bill. The first concern was raised regarding the RTI law. Right to information activists who had been calling the attention to the dilution of the law found that the new data protection bill weakened it some more. Why was that? When you think about it, the data protection bill seeks to protect data or information that the right to information law makes possible to access. What happens now? How is it decided which information is personal and which is public? This is where the harm test comes in.
The formula for balancing the right to information law vis-a-vis the rights provided under or recognized under the data protection law, that formula has already been it has been put in the public domain by multiple groups of experts, starting with the Justice A.P. Shah Committee, which went into the issue of data protection in 2012. And they said that whatever information that citizens can access under the Right to Information Act should not be taken away through a data protection law or personal data protection law. Then in 2018 or so, Justice B.N. Sri Krishna Commission, they also looked at the whole issue of the so-called contradiction between the Right to Information Act and the data protection law, personal data protection law. And they said that strengthen the harm test in 81J, and they actually defined what would be meant by harm. For example, harm to reputation, harm to personal property, theft of identity, or impersonation, a whole range of, harms that could possibly be the result of disclosure of personal information. So they said, so long as those harms are not likely to occur, then you can disclose information as per the Right to Information law.
One of the sections impacted is Section 8(1)J of the RTI Act. This section contains what Venkatesh refers to as the harm test. This section lists information that can be exempted from being disclosed if it is not related to public activity or interest. But the key point to note here is that this exemption is not absolute.
Because the purpose of the Right to Information Act is not to create entire categories of information as inaccessible to citizens. Instead, most of the exemption clauses in Section 8 say that disclosure will be prevented or exempted only if there is a certain harm to a public interest. So now what happens is the Section 8(1)J is being denuded of the harm test. And therefore, it becomes a blanket exemption. And why is the worry? Empirical data shows that the most frequently used of exemptions to deny information, even otherwise, is Section 8(1)J. That is information relating to individuals' personal information. In any case, is being used. More than 30 to 35% of RTI applications at the public information officer stage get rejected on the basis of the argument that it is personal information. Now, this proportion of rejection is probably going to double or triple with the coming into force of this amendment to the Right to Information Act through the Data Protection Bill. The other aspect of the amendment is the unfortunate proposal to delete the proviso under Section 8(1)J of the RTI Act. Now, what does this proviso say? The proviso says very clearly, information that cannot be denied to Parliament or state legislatures shall not be denied to citizens under this law. Now, that proviso is also being done away with through the Right to Information Act. And that is through the amendment to the Right to Information Act, and that is extremely worrisome.
The changes in the RTI Act due to the Data Protection Bill will have many implications on citizens, especially on their fundamental rights.
The primary impact of this is on the fundamental right of citizens. And that is most unfortunate. And what is the primary impact? That citizens, being equal stakeholders in a democracy, have a role to play in the ensuring of the proper functioning of democracy and, most importantly, of governance. What Right to Information Law does, and what it has done for the last 17 years, is it has proved itself to be a tool in the hands of citizens to demand transparency and accountability from government, from public authorities, from the panchayat level up to Rashtrapati Bhavan for their actions and decisions. Governments at the central and state level are investing hundreds of thousands of crores of taxpayers' money in direct benefit transfer programs. It could be the PM Kisan Yojana benefiting farmers. It could be the PM Swanidhi Yojana benefiting street vendors. It could be the National Social Assistance Program where pension is given to widows and people with disabilities. There are innumerable instances of ineligible people getting the benefits of these schemes. And citizen activists, civil society groups, and media persons like you are able to point out to these problems in the implementation of these direct benefit transfer programs, or what are called public welfare programs or social welfare programs. They're able to point this out simply because there is access to personal information. So if the amendment to 81J that's being made through the Data Protection Bill, if that becomes law, then there is a very strong likelihood that the beneficiaries list under various welfare schemes will simply be taken away. So there will be no way of finding out who's, whether only eligible people are getting the benefits of such schemes or ineligible people. So if ineligible people are getting it, then it's a waste of taxpayers' money. It's also fraud committed on the country.
Section 8(1)(j) is just one of the concerns according to the RTI activists. So the big question is, what was the need to amend the RTI Act? Do you know the amendment to RTI Act was not even recommended by the Joint Parliamentary Committee in the first place? This is the same committee which vetted the Data Protection Bill 2021. The government failed to give an explanation even during the debate in the Lok Sabha. It's not just the RTI activists. Even the Editorial Guild of India has concerns with the new bill. The Guild said that certain provisions of the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill can have adverse impact on press freedom. It also said the bill creates an enabling framework for surveillance of citizens, including journalists and their sources. What are the other main problems with the Data Protection Bill? There is a lack of independence and autonomy of the oversight body, the Data Protection Board. Section 19 of the bill empowers the government to appoint chairperson and deciding members of the board. Why is this a problem?
The government wants to keep everything under its control. So what is essentially happening is this, that despite the fact that there are several provisions through which the government can exempt many of its instrumentalities and its departments from the coverage of the data protection law, the digital data protection law, there will still be some who will be covered by this law in the government sector. So government will be an interested party. Now, to say that the Data Protection Authority will be formed, its tenure, its service conditions, its budgets, etc., everything will be decided by government, it creates a conflict of interest because the government will be the responding party before the Data Protection Authority in relation to any complaint that any person, citizen or non-citizen, may bring before the Data Protection Authority against a government agency that has violated his or her rights. So this is what is hugely problematic. Leaving everything to subordinate legislation is not the best option.
The bill has been passed in the Lok Sabha, but before it becomes a law, it has to be passed in the Rajya Sabha, following which the President has to give her approval. Once it becomes a law, India will have a data protection bill of its own, which was long due. But does it protect fundamental rights of its citizens? Not really. Thanks for watching. For more such videos, follow Deccan Herald on all social media platforms.